Welcome to another episode of Athletes Evolution. I'm Raymond Gonzalez, manual osteopath and human performance specialist, and I'm here with my co-host,
Braden McNabb of Dirtbag Baseball Nation.
Last episode, we talked a lot about mindset and some tips and tricks on how to enhance one's mindset and thought processes and how to kind of battle the stresses and anxieties of everyday life and the stresses and anxieties of sports. Right? And today we're going to talk about a few things that kind of mesh in with the whole mindset, and that's our ability to adapt and evolve, as well as create good habits that are going to ultimately feed to our strengths physically and mentally, okay, and spiritually. All right. So the first thing is what is it to adapt? Adapting is the ability to adjust. All right. And kind of evolve on the fly. So the best athletes in the world, they have that ability to, I've made a mistake. They have that ability to kind of bounce back very, very quickly. So that's what adaptation is. And for me, it's a very crucial component of being an elite human being and being an elite athlete. It's a crucial component to our survivability in everyday life. In Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species, he talks about two different types of evolution: domesticated evolution and natural evolution. So domesticated evolution essentially is the evolution in ourselves that we control, all right? Things that we control on a conscious level. So it could be exercise and strengthening ourselves, and it could be reading a book to improve our intellectual level, all right? Those are domesticated levels of evolution, things that, again, we control. Even our breathing, although our breathing is an automatic function, it's a subconscious function, we still do have some sort of control over it because we can manipulate the manner that we are breathing, and we can manipulate the manner in which we walk, although it's something we learned when we were very young. You can control improper patterns and habits, even on a mindset level. You can get rid of bad habits, you can get rid of negative thoughts, right? Some people have a harder time with that, but this is what this podcast is essentially for, and what we're here for is to teach people how do I battle the negativities and take positives out of them and keep growing and progressing. Okay, and the natural aspect of Darwin's theory of evolution is the natural components that we adapt to every day. All right, from getting out of bed to walking to running to breathing to talking. Those are things that we constantly do, and our body just kind of finds ways to adjust and adapt to those. So those are our natural evolutions, things that we just adapt to based on things we do in our basic everyday life. So feeding off our last episode that we talked a lot about mindset, how do we improve our mental and mind adaptability and evolution? Well, essentially, we want to encourage ourselves to always learn new things. That's going to stimulate the thought processes and mental aspect of being a human being. All right, we want to always challenge our mind. All right, introducing ourselves to new things, even again going back to reading books and reading things that you're passionate about, things you're interested in learning about, and essentially improving and strengthening our intellectual aspect.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So the mindset, some people, like tying it right back to the mindset, there's two mindsets that we can take on here. There's some people that fear change, fear adaptation, fear growth, which I get, of course, but then there's this type of people that embrace it, that are striving for growth, that understand that as humans, we're designed for growth. We're designed for adaptation. We've been adapting since the beginning of time. Language is an adaptation, it's an innate human ability to be able to adapt and grow. And if you take on that mindset that we are designed to adapt and grow, it's going to make that process a lot quicker, a lot more seamless. One of the basic functions, maybe the most basic function of the brain, is to drive you away from pain and fear and push you towards pleasure. So, and when I'm looking at it as like a reptilian brain or whatever, like our non-conscious, like kind of just like basic human need brain, that's what it wants to do. It just wants to push us towards survival. So if you recognize the fact that it is trying to drive you away from pain and push you towards pleasure, then you understand that, okay, this is built into my human nature. Of course, waking up and going to work some days is going to suck. Of course, like certain things that are perceived as painful, and your brain is going to tell you, shit, I don't want to be doing this.
Fear is a natural emotion,
Yeah.
right? And we can either let fear dominate and dictate what we're capable of doing and what we're going to achieve, or we can take our fears and adapt to them and learn to them, all right? And ultimately grow and progress further and further and further, right?
Yeah.
And as an athlete, you're going to face a lot of failures and ups and downs. And it's you as an athlete and an individual to decide, am I going to let my fear of failure kind of, like I just said, kind of dominate me and dictate what I'm capable of doing? Or am I going to tell fear to kind of, get
Kick
lost?
it.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like that certain fear of failure roots back to like, okay, if we fail and if people see me messing up, like, am I going to get kicked out of the tribe? Because obviously, like at some point in our existence, like there was that certain fear that if I say the wrong thing or if I do the wrong thing or if I mess this up, then I get kicked out of the tribe and I die. So that's built in, like that's a very primal fear. Where nowadays, if you mess up, say you go up to the plate and you strike out, there's still that fear that if I mess up, everybody's going to hate me. I'm going to get kicked out of the tribe. Like this is the end of the world. When in reality, that's just not the case. You drive on and nobody cares.
Yep.
So it is that built-in primal fear, and you do feel it as if, oh my God, this is the end of the world if I do mess up. But it's really not. That's some nonsense fear that you have no reason reacting to.
Well, that's the same thing with like, if I were to relate it to something that a few people experience, car accidents, for example. People get into a car accident, they're afraid to get back in the car.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't push yourself back into that zone and get out of that comfort zone, that fear is going to keep manipulating.
Oh, it's debilitating.
You take over, right? Yeah. And even for an athlete who's dealing with injuries, right? I know from experience when I was coming back from arm surgeries and stuff, it wasn't so much that I was afraid, it was more that I was a little tentative, like, okay, I got to pick up this ball and throw it again.
Yeah.
I got to do something I've been doing since I was 6 years old that I haven't been able to do for the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Right? And it's there. It's a natural mechanism, fear.
Oh, for sure, sure. Your brain's just trying to protect you. It's not working against you. Like that's its mechanism to say, hey, like maybe you shouldn't be doing this because you could get hurt or something bad could happen. So sometimes like fear, it becomes debilitating, like you said. A step to look at it is more, you got to look at it rationally and say like, what is this fear actually providing me? What is this fear actually doing? What are the consequences of me taking this fear head on and me either getting over it, or if I do this and I do fail or whatever, also what are the consequences? Yeah. Because a lot of the time you think, okay, if I get up in front of this class and I have to speak, or I got to give this presentation, or like I said, you go up to the plate, if you strike out or you mess up the speech or you look like an idiot, you might think, okay, like this is the end of the world, but it's not. Rationally, it's not. Nobody's going to care 2 minutes after it's done.
And that comes back to domesticated evolution, the evolution that you can control. You ultimately control the outcome, right? You can either, like I said, let things weigh down on you and decide not to kind of kick them away, or you can say, no, I'm getting rid of this. I'm not letting this take over my life, right?
Well, far too many people just let it take over their life.
Exactly. So the next thing is now coming down to the physical aspect of our adaptation and evolution, right? Now, obviously, we need our mindset to work first because our body can only do what our brain reciprocates. Okay, if our brain doesn't have we're not in the right state of mind, then our body's not going to be able to function optimally, right? So how do I improve myself on a physical level? Well, we are three-dimensional beings. We are dynamic beings. We're not static. Even if we're sitting still, we have parts of our body that are still functioning. Our breathing, all right? Our organs still have to function. Our mind is still firing, all right? So, like I said, we're always dynamically engaged, no matter what. Even when we're sleeping, we go through our dream cycles and all that kind of stuff, we're still engaged. Something is still firing and something is still working in order to have us stabilize and keep working and ultimately kind of getting our homeostasis to where it needs to be. Okay, so how do I improve myself physically? One would be exercise. Okay, when you exercise, you're essentially getting stronger, you're able to endure more, you're able to prevent injuries a lot better, right? And moving, which could kind of go hand in hand with exercise, but you don't always need that resistance or weights there. Sometimes it's okay to just teach your body how it was designed to move, right? So even when I'm training and treating a lot of people, I find that people are very closed off and they're very two-dimensional about the way they're moving. And it's like, well, if you're not moving the way our central nervous system was designed to function, then you're going to lose the ability to move optimally, right? So even like if I'm teaching mobility and stuff, I teach people move to where your tissue and your joints allow you to move, all right? Not violently, but with control, all right? If I teach my body and my joints and my tissues how to get to certain ranges that I may not be used to, but are essentially a part of what I'm supposed to do every day, then I'm only going to function better and evolve quicker and adapt better, especially as an athlete, right? That's going to carry over to when I'm in a competition or in a game, right? I'll be able to adapt a lot better to situations that might otherwise be very traumatic to me or be very aggressive and violent to me. And then if I teach my body how to physically adapt outside of that, and then when I carry it over, then my body's going to know how to respond a lot better when I'm kind of faced with situations that would otherwise lead to injuries or mental lapses or anything like that, right? It allows, if I have that adaptability factor and working on improving that off the field and off the ice and out of my competition, then I'm ultimately going to allow myself to function better and improve and be able to accomplish a lot more when I'm in competition, right? Exercise and movement is not about how much weight you can lift and how strong you can be inside of a gym. And it's about my ability to adapt to the extrinsic factors, right? Things that people don't even think about, right? But when I'm walking every day, is the terrain always the same? No, all right? I need to allow my body to adapt to things like gravity. And can I get my body to adjust to weather and stuff? Yes and no. I can tell my body how to adapt to extrinsic forces, right? So I can improve my body's ability to perform when I'm in heavy wind or when it's raining or when it's snowing, all right? And if I expose my body to this, I'm going to evolve. So it's not just about exercise, not just about movement, but it's about exposing my body to things that are ultimately going to enhance my physiology and neurology, right? So something that we'll get a little deeper into later, but I'll bring up now, is cold exposure, all right? Which has become such a big thing in the sports world now. If you can expose yourself to the cold, then ultimately you're going to be better off in the future when you have to get out into the cold on those snowy days, okay? The same thing goes for hot. If it's a really hot summer and you expose yourself to it gradually, your body's going to adapt to that.
Oh, for sure. And not only like the physical side of that, but the mental. Like the mental side of you actually like immersing yourself in a cold bath or taking a cold shower or being out in scorching hot weather. That's where you have to step up your mental game. You know what I mean? If you can breathe through that and find yourself calming down the heart rate and you actually sitting in that cold and kind of embracing it, that translates to everything in the game. You know what I mean? You say, okay, I've been through this, throw anything at me. Because it's a shock to the body. Like you said, it's becoming a massive thing, like sitting in ice baths or taking cold showers. And myself, when I get hit by that first little splash of cold in the cold shower, it is a shock to the system. You know, it's just boom, and instantly you're thinking, I don't want to be here. But if you can take a deep breath and kind of hone it all in, you can get through it. You know what I mean? And you can actually learn to like it. And that puts you in a situation where, say you have an injury or say you're having a bad game or whatever, you can take yourself from that shock of feeling those emotions and that crazy mindset and all that stuff. And now, just like when you have cold immersion, I'm having a bad game or whatever, you can separate that. You can say, okay, I felt that shock before. I'm going to just take a deep breath, calm myself down, and put myself back at the state that I want to be at. So it's not only physical, it's also mental. And I love that. Like you said, the adaptability on stuff like that.
And
huge.
that shock with cold therapy comes
Yep.
from something called the mammalian diving reflex.
Okay.
Right? So what happens is the body goes into a state of survival. It could last 10 seconds. It could last 2 minutes, depending on the person. What happens is our body takes heat from all of our extremities to bring the heat towards our organs. So it's a shock because it's our body trying to keep itself safe and protect our more important intrinsic factors like our organs, right? So that's called the mammalian diving reflex. That's why when people go into cold, and again, sometimes this comes back to fear, so when you watch people go into a cold pool, they usually tiptoe their way in.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So
And
you
it's
just
like,
dive in.
I need to adjust. But in reality, if you just go in, that fear factor gets wiped out and you adjust a lot quicker. I've even read in articles and in some books before that what native tribes do is they actually dunk a newborn baby or they'll dunk a child into a cold creek as a way to adapt and evolve to the harsh environments. So now you may be wondering, okay, how do I implement these things into my lifestyle and ultimately help my ability to adapt and progress and evolve as a human being? Well, for starters, creating a plan. We talked a lot about creating a strategy with the whole mindset episode.
Yep.
And same thing for this. It's create a plan that's going to feed into your evolution, not going to make you regress, but progress, right? So you could do things like challenge yourself, okay, as well. You can challenge yourself to new things, kind of get outside the box, outside your comfort zone. Even kind of embrace your fears a little bit, embrace things that you're afraid to fail at, right? And it'll ultimately work with that plan to say, okay, I'm teaching myself how to adapt. Now, if practice, all right, is the time to learn and the time to build off things that you're afraid of and things that you're afraid to fail at. So what you could also do is practice some mind techniques. It could be breathing, it could be meditation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That will also help you adapt. All right, it'll teach your brain and your mind how to settle in very stressful environments and very anxious situations. And then again, like I said, adapting and evolving the body is about moving and exercising and things like that. Even doing some things like meditation and breathing stuff that are ultimately going to enhance certain patterns, all right, and going to get you more in tune with yourself, all right, and then improving one's overall spirit to connect that whole mind, body, spirit aspect. Again, would be to try and get yourself in tune with yourself, right? And like I said, next episode, we're going to talk a lot about intuition and how do we develop a stronger intuition and why it's so important.
Yeah.
But for the spiritual aspect, like breathing and essentially getting yourself very in touch with nature. Nature's there. It's a living organism. It sends messages to the world. It sends messages to us. Whether people realize that or not, that's a very, very strong element, right? That's why it is one of the 4 major elements, right?
Yep.
So getting in touch with the earth and nature is a good way to kind of tap in and get yourself attuned with your spiritual aspect. And when you're able to connect all those things, which is again something we're going to talk about a lot deeper and further, when you're able to connect all those things is when you're going to start to discover how do you get down that path and follow that journey to ultimately discovering your optimal being, right?
Which is the goal.
Absolutely.
Like we talked about episode 1, for sure. So when it comes to habits, we talked about it, and I guess common misconception or whatever you want to call it is 21 days it takes to develop a habit or break a bad habit.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Depends on the habit.
Okay.
Right. If a habit is, if it's a simple task that you're trying to accomplish, a simple skill set, you'll probably develop that habit a lot faster. Whereas if it's something else, it might take some time. I think the hardest part is starting. starting the habit, right? When I talk to people about getting in the gym, it's like the hardest part is getting to the gym. Once you're in the gym, you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've already conquered that.
Show
You've
up.
already conquered
Show
that big
up
fear.
99% of the battle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that.
I saw a good one when it comes to habits, and it was a quote by a guy named John Butcher, and he said, "It's easier to do something 100% of the time than it is 99% of the time." Meaning, like, if you give yourself the leeway to do it sometimes, but not all the time, that habit's not getting built. You know what I mean? Like, we're designed to be as lazy as we possibly can be, you know? And habits are great because if you develop that habit, we're habitual, we're going to continue to do that. But if you can't develop that habit, you can't willpower your way to developing that habit. You know what I mean? You got to provide a system to get that into place. You got to do it every single day until it becomes subconscious.
And living with intent.
Very, very true.
Doing everything with conviction.
And if you do have that intent, then building a habit, all of a sudden that becomes, okay, like I understand why I'm doing it. So then you have a drive to be able to do that. But if you just say, I'm going to develop the habit of eating healthy. No, you're not. You know what I mean? But if you have that intention, okay, I'm doing this because, and this is what I'm going to do to achieve whatever that goal is, then it becomes way easier. You understand your why. You understand that, okay, it's going to take some discipline. Where if you just say, I'm going to do this, it's not going to happen. You know, and that's part of the game plan, like we talked about, setting up a game plan.
You know what the problem is everybody wants that magic pill. They want that easy solution to everything. Yeah. Well, guess what? Most things, the things you want the most in life are the things you're going to have to work the hardest for. Mm-hmm. All right? The things that you're absolutely going to have to give your all for.
Yeah.
Because if it's not worth having or it's not something worth fighting for, then chances are you're probably going to be very lazy about it.
Yeah.
And not as passionate about it.
Oh, for sure.
So how are some of the ways that you've created better habits in the past?
I think it's more about setting up systems. So like you put stuff in place where it's just, okay, I'm going to do this at this time, and like we just talked about, some habits are going to take 21 days, some are going to take 2, some are going to take not 2 obviously, but some are going to take a very long time. But if you have a system in place that says, oh, I have this book here, like say a book on my bedside table, now I just pick up the book and read it before I go to bed. You know what I mean? I don't have to consciously say, okay, it's bedtime, I'm going to go and read. Now it's just a habit for me. Or like you said, brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth, at some point that was a learned thing. But now it's just a subconscious thing. You wake up and you say, okay, like this is part of my day. This is a habit. I'm going to brush my teeth. Mm-hmm. And you feel weird if you don't do that. So it's more about setting up your environment so it's automatic. Where it's weirder to not do it than it is to do it. If you have stuff sitting right there and you know your intent, like you had mentioned, you're going to do it. But if it's out of sight, out of mind, then it's going to be way harder to say, okay, now all of a sudden I'm going to go and do this. Yeah. You know? Also, I have a calendar, and a calendar kind of keeps you in check. A calendar, a to-do list, whatever it is, that keeps you in check, at least. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then that habit, all of a sudden, it's right in your face instead of just being regurgitated through your brain. If it's in your brain, it's easy to move on and do something else or procrastinate or whatever. If it's in front of you, it's, okay, now I know what I have to do and I know why I have to do it.
And it's like that sociological experiment. If you were to put a box of donuts on the counter, you know they're there, you want to eat them. Yeah. But if you don't have junk food in your house,
you're not going to eat it.
You're not going to eat it. You're going to eat what is right in front of you and exposed to, right? If you do have a little bit of a lazy mindset and you're hungry or something, you come down to the kitchen, okay, and you don't see, or you see junk food, you're probably not going to be inclined to be like, I'll go out and buy healthier food then. No, this is right here in front of me.
And
right.
You can say, tomorrow I'm going to get healthy food.
Yeah.
But, today I'm going to eat this because it's sitting there. Yeah. You're 100% right.
And you'll hear that a lot from people. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow.
Classic.
Why?
Because tomorrow never comes. So, and it gives you that, like, false sense of accomplishment. I'm going to hold myself accountable tomorrow. So you feel good for a split second, but you're never going to get there. Yeah. Another big one is, like you had mentioned, the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah, a good supporting cast. So good friends and good family members, people who are going to ultimately support your path and your journey and the goals you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah. And even like if you come from a healthy family that eats good, that exercises, that's naturally in nature, that likes spending time being active,
Yeah.
the likelihood of you being active, in shape, a healthy weight
It's very probable.
is
Yeah.
nearly 100%.
Yeah.
Where if you come from a family where the habits are negative and you guys don't work out, you eat unhealthy, the likelihood of you straying away from that while living in that same family, like being in that same household, being around the food that they eat, the habits that they take in, the TV shows that they watch, whatever it is, the likelihood of you being out of shape and not healthy is really high as well. You know what I mean? So set yourself up. Notice that if the people that you're hanging out with aren't conducive to the overall goals that you want to set, the habits that you want to build in yourself, maybe it's time to wean yourself away from them. You know?
And another habit that I've used for quite some time is actually writing down goals, or writing down my ambitions or my dreams, or even writing down emotions. How do I feel today? Or because I feel like, again, that kind of holds me a little bit accountable, and it kind of gives me an indication if one day I didn't feel right and the next day I did. Okay, what am I doing differently? Right? I kind of have that little bit of feedback, right, to understand what I'm doing right or wrong. Right? It lets me, if I'm constantly journaling and writing down how far I'm going, then I can ultimately track my goals. Right? I usually tell people start small. Like, you can write your big goal in there, but start small and kind of gradually build up to that, because you can't go from point A to point B when point B is like 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Right? Like this. So I generally tell people build smaller goals. So, like, for example, if we're talking about like even like weight loss or something, right? It's, if you're trying to lose 100 pounds, why don't you lose 25 first?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and speaking of building habits, that right there, that's building a habit right there. You're gonna get to 100 pounds if you can lose 25 pounds, and then you get that mindset. You start moving in the right direction. You get that upward spiral. You know what I mean? Where you're building that positive habit. Then it's a lot easier. But you're right. If you set the big goal and say, "Oh, I'm gonna be a millionaire by next month," you know, it's not realistic, and then you're gonna end up going the other way, where it's a negative spiral, because you say, "Oh, I can't achieve my goals."
Yeah. And another thing that I've tried to implement a lot into my life over the last couple of years is what's called precognition. So essentially planting the seed in your brain, right? So how do I practice precognition? Essentially by preparing myself and learning about the tasks that are ahead of me and in front of me, right? I always hear people talk about how unlucky they are, or things happen to them, when I'm a big believer things happen for you, right? I'm a big believer in creating my own luck and my own opportunities, right? I'm a big believer in that when success is when preparation meets opportunity, right? That's kind of what I live my life by. That's one of my biggest mottos is, you know, if I really want something bad enough, I'm going to go out and get it, right? I can't expect things to come to me all the time. If I feel like I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to find a way to make my day better. And that's something I think people have a very, very hard time kind of turning off that switch and saying, how do I go into a different gear and start going forward instead of constantly dwelling on...
just ruminating.
Yeah.
Well, that happens a lot. Like myself include, anybody, but you get in that space and it's, you just negatively ruminate in your brain.
Yeah.
And you're right. If you can have a switch that says, okay, like, this is doing nothing for me, this is where I want to go. And I think that's why it's important to have a plan or somewhere that you are moving. So then when you get in that mind space, you say, how is this helping me in any way? How is this, one, making my day better? How is this, two, making me progress in life in any way, shape, or form? How is this, three, allowing me to move a step closer to those goals? You know? And if you can have the plan, if you can have these habits in place, you're gonna pull back when you get in that negative mind space. So precognition, explain a bit more on that.
So like I said, it's like you're planting a seed, right? You're essentially preparing yourself for the steps you need to take to move forward, right? So if you know something's coming, a competition is coming, or if you know you have a presentation or something like that at work, well, the best way for me to succeed at it is ultimately by preparing it and kind of repeating things in my head and kind of going over the presentation or going over what I need to remember in a game over and over again.
So is this visualization?
Yeah,
or?
it could be through visualization. It could be through writing something down.
Yeah.
It could, it's just, it's that preparation phase. If you'll hear a lot about like the great athletes, they're hours and hours and hours before everybody else because they're physically and mentally preparing themselves. A good example is Roy Halladay. Okay, people said his preparation was second to none. He used to, show up to the stadium so early, and he used to work on all of his mental preparation, which was a big aspect of his game. Right, there's a few books that he endorsed. All right. One of them being The Mental Game of Baseball. All right. He said that he accredited that to a lot of his successes in his baseball career. Right. So it's just that preparation phase, right? Which a lot of people don't have. And I can say that about people's mental preparation. I could say that about people's physical preparation. How many times, if you were to walk into a big box gym right now, how many people do you think will warm up properly?
2%.
if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't prepare themselves correctly, right? And even the people who do warm up, for the most part, most of them are still doing it incorrectly.
Yeah.
Right? And that comes back to that us being very three-dimensional beings. You'll see a lot of people work through like maybe one or two of the planes of motion. But our central nervous system was designed to go through 3 basic planes of motion, right? If I don't warm up through all 3 planes, is my body going to fire and optimally work? Probably not, because certain muscle groups aren't going to activate or fire the way they're supposed to. And a lot of those muscle groups you're not thinking about are the ones that act as stabilizers in movement, right? So, again, going back to the mental side of things, if I'm not mentally preparing myself, chances are I'm going to have a lot of hiccups in a presentation, or
for sure.
if I'm a speaker or something at a presentation, speaking to hundreds of people, if you're not prepared for it, it can be nerve-wracking, right?
Intimidating.
Yeah,
because then when you fall off, like it's a lot harder to get back on if you haven't mentally prepared yourself.
Exactly.
Where if you've gone through that, if you've run yourself through the fact that this is how it's going to go, then you can kind of hone it back in if you have a little hiccup or something goes wrong or something goes unexpected, where you're right, if you aren't prepared, it might be game over if you make that mistake.
I mean, so those would be the major things in terms of, helping us adapt on the physical and mental levels and stuff like that. Like I said, next episode, we're going to get a lot into how to develop one's intuition. It's something that a lot of people don't talk about. All right, but there's major reasons why somebody should focus on their intuition. We all have a natural intuitive ability, but for the most part, a lot of people have it shut off. So we're going to talk a lot about how do we kind of wake up that subsystem of our body, and how do we get it to function properly, and how it's going to carry on over to, sporting events or life events and stuff like that, and how ultimately it's going to help you stay very, very in tune with yourself. But those are things we're going to dive into deeper for sure. I hope everybody really enjoyed the episode, and we're always going to kind of feed off the episodes we're doing and kind of branching back and diving into things deeper at some point, right?
Yeah, these are more general right now, but
exactly. We're just kind of getting a lot over the philosophies and the kind of components that we believe are need more focus and are very neglected and stuff.
Major keys.
We're gonna show and teach everybody how do we connect these elements and into ultimately discovering what it means to discover your prime being, your absolute optimal state. And like we said last episode, some people may never find that, but if you're constantly working towards it, you're only gonna evolve and adapt and improve yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So my name's Raymond Gonzalez.
Braden McNabb.
And we hope you enjoyed your episode. We'll see you guys next time.